Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Match+Book podcast. My name is Paul. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here at EBPL, and welcome to Season 4 of the podcast. Who knew we would even finish Season 1, but here we are all the way at Season 4. It's pretty good. So for the past 2 seasons or so, I feel like I failed to mention that the idea and conception of the Match+Book podcast came from a form on our website. If you go to our homepage, hover over the Explore tab, and all the way on the right, you'll see a link that says EBPL Match+Book, and that'll bring you to the form that we have where you get personalized recommendations for books, much more specific than I give out here. Although, I mean, this is a great way to share so many different things with everybody, but if you really want something hyper specific, definitely go to that link, fill out the form, and I'll get back to you in the next few days with a list of recommendations for something you might like. We took the concept of the form and grew it into the podcast, and the heart of the idea lives on through the podcast, and also the form is available as well. So 2 great ways to match you up with something you might like. So Season 4, here we go. Normally, I would take recommendations that people send in. That's usually how we do it. But since it is March, it's Women's History Month, I thought go into some of our favorites on this subject. So one of my favorites on this subject that I've read recently is The Radium Girls by Kate Moore. This is a nonfiction book set. It starts out in the very early 20th century where radium had just been discovered by the Curies, and it's now being utilized in so many different products. You know, it's used in medical devices, tonic water, body lotions, you name it, it had radium in it at the time. So in order to harvest this, there were radium factories all over the United States. And there were hundreds and hundreds of girls whose job was to work in these radium factories and to work directly with the radium with very few protections because as it was so new, we didn't know the damaging health effects. They would come home from their jobs and they would be lit up like fireflies, their whole bodies just shining. And they knew something wasn't quite right about that, but they didn't exactly know what the effects of it would be. The book goes a lot into exactly what is happening to their bodies in the after effects that is caused by the exposure to radium, the way they really kind of fall apart over time, they wither, they lack physical strength and are kind of ignored by doctors and, are not really treated with the level of care that they deserve from experiencing something so harrowing. As the book continues, you start to realize that the corporations that employed these girls knew more about the harmful effects of radium exposure than was let on at the beginning. And it's a lot of backtracking to try to say these girls were sick in the first place. These are other health effects that they've already had, and these things aren't being caused by exposure to radium. And all of this is nonsense, denial, scapegoating that is infuriating. And, you can kind of see it all coming because obviously they never cared to begin with. But at the same time, it's just it's infantilizing, it's misogynistic, it's patronizing, it's just so cruel to them that while they are withering away physically, they have to endure such insolence from a corporate figurehead. So what follows from there is an account of many of the girls' paths towards seeking reimbursement for health, for their maladies they've experienced from the radium, as well as for the protections going forward for any workers, women, men, anybody who has to work in factories. So on one hand, it is extremely infuriating to read about these accounts. It is uplifting to see the wherewithal they had to go through with this and to really hold people's feet to the fire and really get out there what was happening to them and to make sure it didn't happen again. So really check that one out. It will make you very mad, but also so uplifted to see the resolve they had. The next book I wanted to discuss is Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. This book is a biographical graphic novel about Bechdel's upbringing at a funeral home / family home in rural Pennsylvania. So it was a funeral home on the premises of her own family's house, where they lived there, but it also functioned as a funeral home, which is why the book is called Fun Home, fun being short for funeral. And if that sounds like maybe a bit morbid, tongue-in-cheek humor, that is definitely the tone of the book. So if you like that joke that she set up right in the title, chances are you'll like the book itself as well. So in this book, we see Alison as a young girl, and really shows her as a smart, literate child, head always in a book. And it shows her relationship with her father, which is often fraught. And you see her growing up in the house, lots of family issues going on, but kind of burbling beneath the surface, because what this book does a great job of is showing how when you're a kid, you can kind of recognize that something is off with your family situation, but you don't have all the faculties or vocabulary to fully comprehend the complete picture of what's going on. And I think that's something this book does fantastically, is showing how as you age, you get a little bit more understanding of why is my family not like other families? What's wrong with us? Why are we a little bit different, kind of thing, in addition to, running a funeral home out of your own house. But that's beside the point. Maybe it has a little something to do with it. That's just my conjecture. But anyway, as a young adult, Alison realizes that she is gay and that her father might also have been gay as well. But the thing is, she only finds that out after he has mysteriously passed away. And it really makes her consider the dynamic of the relationship. Did her father already think she was gay? Did he know that she knew he might have been gay? There raises a lot of questions in retrospect. And what you see is her coming to terms, how it must have been for him as growing up as a gay or bisexual man in rural Pennsylvania, and then her in the current times as well, also as a lesbian growing up in this setting. And what follows is really an amazing exploration into all of these unspoken facets of a father-daughter relationship and trying to make sense of so many things that happened years ago in the relationship, how it could have been repaired, how to come to terms with things that maybe didn't come off so well, and maybe the reasons for that. Alison Bechdel, she gets into so many of these things in trying to dredge up memories and old things she's experienced as a kid. And the end product is really beautiful commentary on family dynamics, on shared experiences that are difficult to share with others, and ultimately forgiveness for those who've maybe wronged us in the past, but tried to make the best of a bad situation. The last book I wanted to mention is Dolly Parton, Storyteller, My Life in Lyrics, which Dolly wrote herself. This came out a few years ago. It's just a clever and strange way of structuring a nonfiction book, because it's kind of like a memoir and biography. But what Dolly is doing in this is taking hundreds of her songs and taking the lyrics, the impetus behind them, the conception of them, and then using these lyrics as a way of guiding a biography. So obviously we start out with lyrics about childhood and her growing up and things like that, and move toward more current matters. So in structuring a book like this, you get a good look at her inspiration for the songs themselves. So if you are a big Dolly Parton fan, you will get a look into some part of her personal history that is mixed with the song lyrics themselves. So you get her personal story, her recounting of how the song was written, what it means to her, why she wrote it. And by doing so, you get a look into why she loves music, relationship with her family, how she grew up as one of 12 kids in an Appalachian cabin with few amenities, not much in way of material things, but, was extremely positive in her outlook of life and how that informed where she eventually got to today. And you see how she's been writing songs for over 60 years at this point. It's really a fascinating look back at her own history and the history of our country as well, and what was going on at the time while she was writing these things. So it's just beautiful storytelling about songwriting that goes across generations, genders, social divides, international boundaries, all of these things to make for a really fascinating look at a fascinating person already. I mean, who doesn't like Dolly Parton? And also, little extra incentive is that there's all these previously unpublished images from her personal archives, little anecdotes behind them, that kind of thing as well. It helps make the book fun, keeps it moving, and really makes for a enjoyable read. So check that one out as well. So those are just a few of my recommendations to celebrate Women's History Month. I tried to choose books about different subject matters, different types of people, different walks of life, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening once again. Remember, you can always listen to the EBPL podcast at ebpl.org/podcast. And thank you to Melissa Hosick for editing this episode. Thank you.